Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor John Campbell, and I'm joined by Councillor and Speaker Francis Nunziata and socializing Councillor Joe Mihevik. We have quorum. I'd like to call the Budget Subcommittee for Etobicoke, East York, and York Consultations meeting to order. This meeting is one of a series of meetings that are happening across the city to hear public deputations on the 2018 capital and operating budgets. As usual, I'd like to remind everyone that these sessions are being taped. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, we can start with the first deputation. Deputants will have 5 minutes to speak. I'll be timing it, this iPad. And the first person, and then you may be receiving some questions from councillors afterwards. And the first person is Lynn Adamson. Is Lynn here?
You can ask them to put the PA system a little higher. It's not very
Can you
high.
put the PA system a little bit higher? Is this Lynn? No. Next person is Lori Sean Borzove. Okay. Marlene McIntosh, Urban Arts. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Laura Sean and I were deputing together, but he's headed out of town, so he wasn't able to make it. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marlene McIntosh. I'm the Executive Director at Urban Arts, one of Toronto's 6 local art service organizations, or LASSOs for short, serving up the arts in the underserved neighborhoods outside of the downtown core. I'm here today to speak with you about the growing value of the arts in all of the neighborhoods outside of the downtown core and the impact of the city's ongoing investments in the arts across the city, and in particular the York Southwestern neighborhood and former City of York boundaries in which we operate. Urban Arts is a nonprofit organization serving residents within the former City of York. We are celebrating our 30th year of services to artists and the community this year. Our 4-year strategic plan, 2020 vision, continues to embolden us to chart the course for expanded services to the entire population within the former City of York boundaries, while maintaining a focus on youth and on the former city, on the York Southwestern area. With your much valued support, in the last year, we have provided arts and culture programs and activities directly to well over 5,000 people and have touched the lives of thousands more. This year, actually the latter part of 2017, we submitted a new joint LASSO 4-year business plan to the city's Arts and Culture Division. This joint plan was developed to meet set financial goals, to assist us with continuing to stabilize our organization's operations so that we can more efficiently and effectively meet our programming, operating, and infrastructure needs. The plan was also developed to keep in mind with the city's economic development and culture's new strategy. The recent Nordic City report commissioned by Economic Development has shown clearly that the city's investment in the arts has had an immeasurable and positive impact and gains across the city. The report states that effects of collaboration between arts organizations and arts opportunities for young and emerging artists, especially in the area of community arts, are increasing, and that there's an increase in the administrative capacity for small and medium-sized organizations, and that there's a growing effectiveness of incentives to improve access to suitable cultural spaces through both space sharing incentive and direct capital funding. Nordic City, in this report, recommended that to maximize the impact of the city's investment in cultural grants moving forward, the city should consider new directions in funding, including more targeted investments in key sustainability risks for the sector. As we anticipate the launch of and the move of our John Street space to the new Artscape Weston Cultural Hub in Weston later this year, our goal is to further capitalize on those gains that we have made and on our continued support, your continued support for the arts, creating and maintaining more effective and much-needed vibrant spaces for artists to create and for community to engage. This support will help us to offer new and increased services to the larger population as outlined in our Strategic Plan 2020 vision. We urge you to make the final $2 million commitment, a final step in the goal of meeting the $25 per capita goal for the arts previously set for 2017. We're almost there, and your commitment will help us to get there. We urge you to help us to continue to meet our strategic and financial goals, as in doing so, we're supporting the city in accomplishing the goals set out in its cultural plan and in the Community Arts Action Plan, and of course, for urban arts and the other LASSOs to continue to work as effectively as we do. Thank you.
Councilor Mahavik.
Thank you very much. Always good to see you. I understand the $2 million. I'm looking at this document here, and it does say in this document, and maybe this is the $2 million, $250,000 for major cultural organizations, music strategy rollout, public art operations and maintenance, Toronto Significant Events Investment Program, Toronto Arts Council, $500,000. But I don't see the LASSOs.
Well, we were advised that we would not be getting an increase as part of this, but we're hoping that it will be included in this, that it will be reworked somehow so that we can have the increase, because we've been flatlined for, we were flatlined for the Pan Am Games, and we were flatlined last year because the money was put into Canada 150. So
Right.
we're hoping to have that increase this year so that we can meet our targets.
So this $2 million and the fact that it's not listed here suggests that LASSOs, they're going to be flatlined again.
As we understand it, yes, and we're
Oh.
hoping that that is not the case.
Okay, and that's beyond the $2 million as far as I know.
Well, as far as we know, within the $2 million would be an increase for the LASSOs. I'm not sure how it would be worked out within the budget, but.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that needs to be checked, so
And
I'm gonna
if
check
it's,
that.
if it's beyond, we're still hoping that, that could be worked in somehow for us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Any
appreciate
other-
this.
Thank you.
Question.
Oh, Francis, go ahead.
Yeah, so you mentioned, Marlene, you mentioned when the John Street, the Cultural Hub opens, hopefully this year, so you're hoping that you would be doing some programming with Artscape on John Street. So the John Street site that you have now, would you still have that site?
No, we would not. We wouldn't be able to afford to operate 3 spaces, so we would shift our programs and services from the current John Street site into the Cultural Hub space.
The cultural.
Yes.
So urban arts in particular, I know you've been successful in getting a number of grants for murals and within the boundaries of York Southwest, and so all the grants that you applied for, you received as far as the mural projects?
And you mean the START program?
Yes.
No, we haven't. We did not receive in 2016, and we did not apply in 2017 because we had 2 other projects from previous years that we needed to finalize, so we could not apply last year. But
Okay.
previous to that, we did receive funding each year.
Yeah, and so when you came in to meet with me in my office, I pointed out to you that in certain developments that happen in the city, that there's a percentage of art that's contributed to the community. So would urban arts be interested in tapping into some of those funds as well in
Most
projects?
definitely, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next, I have Jay Scott. Hi, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. My name's Jay Scott, as you know. I live in Ward 11 and belong to Green 13, a West End climate advocacy group. I would like to thank the Budget Committee for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I would also like to thank all council members for voting to adopt Transform TO, Toronto's Climate Action Plan last July. I'm here today to urge you to champion the implementation of this climate plan by ensuring that it is fully funded in the city's 2018 budget. And these are my reasons that Council should go forward and support full funding for it. First of all, the Councillors' unanimous vote to support Transform TO last year demonstrates that they recognize that there is an urgent need to confront climate change and that Transform TO is an effective, integrated plan that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050 while creating many significant economic and social co-benefits. The plan estimates there are many new types of employment opportunities in 2050, and the low-carbon transition is estimated to directly result in 327,000 new person years of employment, and these jobs should be made available to the people of Toronto. The numerous components of Transform TO are designed to act as an integral whole, and its emission reduction targets can only be achieved if Council commits to investing completely in all aspects of the plan in the upcoming budget. The needed investment of $2.5 million is minuscule when compared to the formidable cost of inaction. It is estimated that each dollar invested will return $14 to Toronto in the form of job creation, economic development, and reduced energy costs. Given that urban areas account for approximately 70% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, it is crucial that all cities, especially large ones like ours, take the initiative on aggressive action now to curb climate change. The Transform TO plan, fully funded and fully implemented, will allow Toronto to become Canada's climate leader while ensuring a healthier, more prosperous, and more equitable city for present and future generations. We know that in order to reduce the repair and replacement of what is being destroyed by extreme weather events, such as heat alerts and flooding, we must fully fund the Transform TO plan for $2.5 million in 2018. This is a tiny amount of the city's $10 billion plus budget and less than $1 per resident. And I'd be willing to pay 100 times that to implement the plan. This is not a check for 100, it's $1. And the resulting economic benefit, $14 return for each $1 Toronto invests, is of extraordinary benefit to the city. There is another strong fiscal argument for supporting Transform TO. The Insurance Bureau of Canada has estimated that the 2017 spring floods cost Ontario and Quebec $223 million in insured damage. So if only a $2.5 million investment can help mitigate even a small fraction of flood or storm damage happening in Toronto in the future, it would be a wise investment indeed. Without mitigation, Toronto is looking to repeat this disaster and these costs again and again. Another reason I will give for Council to support fully funding Transform TO is to create good green jobs. These jobs can be created right in our own communities, such as Mount Dennis in Ward 11. The Transform TO plan suggests that one of the best ways to do this will be by training unemployed people in skills such as retrofitting our aging buildings to be more energy efficient, since buildings are a major source of potential greenhouse gas reduction. Finally, I am anguished about the effects this will have on our natural environment and wildlife. As I learn that in all likelihood, in some 20 years or so, it is predicted there will be 66 days each summer where the temperature will soar to between 30 and 44 degrees. This will also have a devastating financial impact when we factor in the costs of cooling all buildings and healthcare costs due to heat-related illnesses that will result. Our ability to conduct our daily lives will be even more weather dependent because it will be dangerous for many residents to be outside in such temperatures. These will not be the only weather impacts in this In the study, Toronto's Future Weather and Climate Drivers Study, Volume 1, recent extreme weather events have been documented for the years 2000, 2009, and even more extreme weather disruptions are anticipated in the future. Can we afford these avoidable costs? In conclusion, Transform TO offers an excellent opportunity to show Toronto Council's commitment to leadership and long-term responsibility. By fully funding Transform TO, Toronto's councillors will be the climate heroes they are called upon to be for the well-being and prosperity for all who live in this great city. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Mahib?
Hi, Jenny. I'm just wanting, because we're not doing so much policy work as we are really frankly trying to find the money for it all. My notes here, are you able to, like, where did you get that $2.5 million number?
Oh, it's in I believe it's in the study, the Transform TO study.
Transform to, okay.
To be sure, I'll get back to you with that because I'm not absolutely certain.
No, I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. And what I think it is, it's fleet fuel efficiency, better buildings programs, Transform TA coordination, community energy planning and low carbon thermal. And it's, I'm not sure what this is, something work plan leading by example. When I add that all up, it's just under $2.5 million. And I guess that's the Transform TO plan for 2018.
This year.
Very modest number for a big city like us.
Like
Less than $1 a person.
That's it. Here's my dollar.
You can leave that with the clerk.
I will.
Yeah.
It'll cost $3 to cash it.
Make sure you
I hope I've
sign it.
endorsed it for Toronto City Hall, so it's up for grabs, but the memo says Transform TO implementation.
Ah, very nice.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Nunziata?
Yeah, Jay, so you, and as you know, Mount Dennis, the Mount Dennis Community Association has actually taken the lead on that.
I
And
know.
we've had numerous meetings with the minister as well in Ward 11. So you do realize that we do have at the city, and we are implementing it in a number of buildings, is the tower renewal.
I'm sorry.
Tower
She's
renewal?
not familiar with
Tower
that.
renewal.
You're not familiar with what
No.
the city is doing. We have a department, an area where it's city staff go out to some of the high-rise buildings that we have, and we've done that in a number of buildings in Ward 11 and in Mount Dennis, and we work with the landlords of the building to work with them on finding efficiencies and in fuel and giving them ideas and working with them, and as well as the federal government as well gives a grant as well. So we've been successful in doing that. So I think that's something that we should continue doing and pursuing that in some of these high-rise
I'm glad you
building.
mentioned it. I wasn't aware of that.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
which has been very positive. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next deputant I have, speaker, is Adriana Shuyen. Is Adriana here? No? Then I have Subir Guyen.
And Lynn Adamson has come.
Beg your pardon?
Lynn Adamson, the first speaker.
Okay. Okay.
Good afternoon,
Hi,
Mr.
good
Chairman,
afternoon.
and councillors present. My name is Shubir Guin, and I'm here from Ward 15, and I'm here to address the same concerns of my previous deputant with regard to climate change, which, as you probably heard, is one of the 5 existential threats around the whole world. So it's a very important issue, and we just want to make sure that there's a follow-through to the 2016 commitment that was made unanimously by the councillors. Now, I was reading the StatScan reports going back to 2011 or so, and they've shown that the energy used to heat, cool, and ventilate buildings accounts for about 40% of Toronto's greenhouse gases. That surprised me. And Google's aerial map of the city shows an appalling paucity of roofs both industrial and residential, that have solar equipment, solar panels installed. And my question is why? Allow me to elaborate what one company spent on covering 120,000 square feet of their premises. This is a very large company in Toronto. And they spent approximately $450 million on this structure, with all the ancillary equipment. And I spoke to the founder of the company this morning. And I asked him what his return on the investment was. And he surprised me. He said it was 7.2 years. It was very well calculated, and he's prepared to back it up. These facts were given to me by this gentleman, and he spent half an hour after I had finished my questions. He spent an extra time talking to me about all the side benefits that he was getting from this project. So I can't elaborate on that because I don't have that much, you don't have that much time to listen. But one of his remarks was he doesn't understand why city planners and a lot of homeowners don't seem to get it. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, this is not money that you have to spend. You get money back. Your return on the investment is far more than what you would shell out. So, the other point I was making is that developers need mandatory laws to include solar panels or roof gardens or other means of saving greenhouse gases before they're granted permits to build these high-rise towers, so many of which are going up, all these. Now, last week, while looking at going to a smaller scale now, I was going over through my gas bills from Enbridge, and I was really shocked and sort of embarrassed to find that this winter, in my home, the amount of gas consumed was 150% over what we spent last year. Same house, same number of residents. And obviously, we've got work to do because I found out that there are doors and windows that need to be plugged. The attic has to be insulated properly. And this is something that's very simple. The cost of materials is a fraction of what we would be getting back over the years. And I have a feeling that I'm not the only homeowner who has this situation. There are much more people need to be informed about this, and this is why educating people, informing them, alerting them to the issue is very necessary, because this greenhouse gases that we generate is much higher than what we need to be. And this can be done without very modest efforts. So if we seriously intend to achieve the goal of cutting down 80% of our emissions by 2050, we have to start working collectively and get on board now to ensure that funds are allocated to fight the problems that we are facing all over the world. As a child, my mother told me...
Can I just get you to wrap up, please?
My mother told me procrastination is the thief of time. And I hope I'll speak to my Councillor Cole, to remember this truism when he votes for finding what has yet to be allocated to this fund. Thank you for this chance to speak to you.
Thank you for coming. Councillor Mihevik has a question.
Yes, so I don't think, so we have a chance to ask you some questions,
Sure.
just to elaborate. So I don't think the current plan includes actually a specific mandate to require even city-owned buildings to go solar. You're advocating that we go beyond even Transform TO to have at least all city buildings have a solar PV or solar thermal or a combination of the two.
Yeah, there are a whole range of ways of cutting down on greenhouse gases, and I don't see why it cannot be applied to all high-rise towers, especially. There are multiple units there. For homeowners, it's a different matter, but it's on a smaller scale. But are you suggesting that at the present law does only mandates it to be applied to city buildings?
Oh, no, I'm going to ask about private buildings, but it's important that government walk the talk.
Okay.
So if we have any buildings, I'm not sure, for example, if there's solar panels on top of this roof right here. We own a lot of roofs. School board owns even more roofs. The school boards own even more roofs. So my question is, do you think that we should, as a society, be saying, you know what, all city buildings, if they're involved in any kind of renovation, pending, the appropriate roof repair, that they be mandated to have solar energy installed on them?
Absolutely. I would support that wholeheartedly, because in the end, we're going to get return on the investment.
We'll even make money on it, is what you're suggesting.
Yeah, and this gentleman who I spoke to this morning, he said he was going to talk to me for the rest of the day, and I said, sorry, I've got to be at a...
Yes. Do you think that we should do the same thing with geothermal as well?
I'm not fully sure about the advantages of geothermal, but I believe it is also very useful and can be applied, but not everywhere. That's what I understand. But the solar panel, the technology has improved vastly, because once again, this gentleman told me that when they started this project, which was about 4 years ago, solar panels are very much more expensive than they are today. So the cost of these are going down, and now it's more of an incentive to invest.
Net metering, yeah. Okay, last question. I have solar panels on my roof.
Great.
I want you to guess how much I paid after I paid Hydro, and then Hydro paid me, how much I paid in August for my electricity bill.
Say $200 a panel?
$4. My
There you
entire
go.
bill was $4.
So I'm way out now. Thank you for
Thank
that
you, thank
suggestion.
you.
Now I've got another idea.
Thank you for your time. Next I have on the list Johnny Dibb.
Most new buildings that are going up, they're all putting solar panels.
No, they're not.
The ones in my area are.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm deputing as a resident of Toronto. I work in a warehouse, in the produce fridge of a warehouse in North York, and I live in the area here. I've developed an interest in municipal policy and politics ever since I arrived to this country and settled in Jane and Finch, mostly because the process is very open. City Hall is very open and transparent, but also because of the rich history of Toronto, a history of proud and diverse and civilized Indigenous peoples, a history of settler colonialism, a history of land concessions from the English monarchy to loyalist families that shape our neighborhoods to this day, and a history of an industrial Victorian age and a big public works age and 2 world wars, metropolitan Toronto, and amalgamation. Toronto has a very rich and triumphant and tragic history. After living here for 11 years, I feel very comfortable to suggest to Toronto City Council to hike property taxes. As the councillor from Ward 21 mentioned earlier, we're not here to discuss policy today. We're here to figure out how we're going to pay for the policy that we've already voted in favor of. So City Council has already voted in favor, in some cases unanimously, in favor of very progressive policies like the Road Safety Plan, Vision Zero, the 10-year cycling plan, the Transform TO that was mentioned, and the list goes on. I want to take some specific examples just to illustrate my point, again, not to prove the merit of those policy directions. But under the poverty reduction strategy, there's 3 items I'm going to talk about. There's a program called the Wi-Fi Hotspot Lending. So that's administered by the Toronto Public Library. They lend out a stick, and people can use it to get internet access wherever they go. The users are predominantly young people, under 18. And the cost of expanding that program is $300,000 according to staff, but that is currently unfunded. Sunday service extensions for the Toronto Public Library as well. the cost of implementing that, this is a policy that is highly recommended under the poverty reduction plan. It would cost $575,000 to implement that. That money is currently not there. And then there's the program administered by Toronto Public Health, the student nutrition program. It exists. It almost suffered a massive hit last year. It still exists, but Toronto, the poverty reduction strategy recommends expanding it. And currently there's no money for that. There's upwards of $40 million, as I think everyone's aware here, upwards of $40 million of unfunded items in the preliminary budget. They've been referred to as below-the-line items. But then there's also $9 million of unallocated funds. So for me, it's pretty clear what City Council and City staff have proposed to us. They told us you have $9 million to fund $40 million, go and fight amongst each other. I intend to spend the next 3 to 5 years of my life advocating for cycling facilities and cycling lanes and pedestrian safety. And Councilor Nunziata was kind enough to start a framework for us to do that in Ward 11. And the last thing I want is to be fighting with a 16-year-old girl trying to get Wi-Fi from her library or from a student program that encourages healthy eating. I don't want to take from their pot to fund cycling infrastructure. Cycling infrastructure costs a lot, nothing compared to highways, but still costs a lot. These programs cost peanuts, and I think it's a no-brainer to raise the property tax to fund these programs. Otherwise, what we're going to end up with at City Hall last minute, we're going to be debating till the last minute and going on till midnight, and then we're going to take money out of the reserves to fund snow plowing or something like that. That's not fiscal responsibility. Fiscal responsibility is to know what your expenses are and plan for them as early as possible. We know what our expenses are. What I'm proposing is not radical. I'm not inventing the property tax right now. It exists. You pay 0.0 something times your property value. That's a system that exists, has existed forever now. So all I'm saying is, let's not pretend that homeowners cannot afford it, homeowners can't afford it, and let's not pretend that property taxes only come from working class homeowners. A lot of property owners are big corporations, and they're getting a tax break pretty much for nothing. They're not providing anything in return. So I'm here to encourage city councilors to vote in favor of tax hikes.
Councilor Mihevik has a question.
Yes, I think you have the numbers right. 42 or 40, sorry, I'll just be precise. $41 million are all the ads. They have identified $9 million staff to fund the $41 million, so we're $32 million short. Are you aware of what kind of property tax increase we need to do to fund the $32 million, more or less?
It's not drastic. It's I think it would be an extra 0.5 percentage point.
No.
Yeah, it's closer to 1.
Okay.
To 1. So 1%. So you're telling me that you would be open to paying an extra 1% on your property taxes, either directly or through your rent?
I pay property tax, and my TTC bill every year has gone up faster than my property tax since 2012. So both in dollar amounts and in percentage.
So what would you say to a community or a community of councilors, say city council, that sometimes feels that really what people want out there is tax decreases, and that, the good councilors are the ones that are trying to save money by putting it in your pocket individually? What do you say to them?
Out of context, people will always advocate for less taxes. Even people who don't pay a property tax, people who rent, or 14-year-olds who don't own property yet, they will always be afraid about the notion of increasing taxes. I was talking to a young girl who takes advantage of the Wi-Fi lending. And I explained to her, I was like, okay, well, you're saying it should be expanded, but do you understand that this would cost more tax money? And she was apologetic, and she said, oh, well, I don't know. But why should she be thinking about the homeowner and the homeowner not thinking about her? And I'm not suggesting that homeowners don't. Homeowners already contribute immensely to a very progressive city with very progressive policies and very big infrastructure. right? I'm not inventing anything new. We already do this very successfully. We have more than 5,000 bus stops because of subsidies. So all I'm saying is subsidies work. Everyone seems to agree that subsidies work. I meet hundreds of people a year through community activities and whatnot. And anytime the subject of property taxes comes up, we'd be talking about, let's say, the ravine strategy and how to prevent stormwater ending up untreated in the lake. And they'll say, well, the city should fund this. So, out of context, people will always like to get a tax cut. But when put in context of funding policies and subsidizing services, most people agree that they should
So
raise
your
taxes.
advice to us is remember the context.
Yeah.
This buys this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Nunziata has a question.
Yeah, so it's really not tax hike, because there are people out there that can't afford to pay their property tax now, right? And if we were to give everything what everybody wants, you're talking a double-digit increase. And there are people out there that are struggling now, especially seniors, on paying their property tax. And if their taxes go up higher than what their old age pension is bringing in, they're going to end up on the street. And you have a lot of homeless. And so what you need to do is you need to balance it. So as far as these departments and that you mentioned, that the library, the Sunday hours and that, the extension now, it's not that the funding's not there. The budget, the departments have come forward with their budget, okay? And what's below that are enhancements, which is something that they want beyond their budget. So it's not that the money's not there. They've come forward
There's a
with
question
their own budget.
coming, right?
So the question is, if the library board, for example, thought the Sunday hours were a priority for them, why would they not include that in their budget?
Because they've been given policy direction by council to limit their increase of spending. So when in the spring, when we give directions to staff to write the budget, we are telling them to write a budget based on our tax increases. I think it would be better, this is not the time to discuss this, but I think it would have been better in the spring, instead of telling staff, give me a budget that meets the criteria of certain tax hikes, to ask them to give us a budget that meets the criteria of providing great service.
Okay, and so there's other ways that they can bring forward their budget without cutting the service. And the direction that we have given to the departments is bring your budget in without cutting services. So there are other areas where they can bring forward their budget in the administrative area without cutting service. So do you wonder why they're bringing in their budget the way they are?
Yeah, because they don't have enough money. According to the money that you guys are allocating to them in hikes year over year, they're not getting enough money to do that. And to answer the question about senior homeowners living on a limited income, they are already protected currently. Even, let's say the city doesn't hike the property taxes, but their land value, because of gentrification or because of something, doubles year over year. They don't pay double the tax. They're protected. There are policies in place that protect seniors from paying the full amount, if that full amount is too high of a percentage.
No, the only protection there is they can defer their taxes.
No, it gets waived completely. I would ask staff to back me up on that.
No, it does not get waived, it gets deferred. There's a tax deferral for seniors.
There's also a tax waiver.
You two can talk about it afterwards.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
So I have a question for
There
you.
is,
Yeah.
There isn't.
You've been here 11 years.
Yeah.
You're kind of passionate about municipal politics, which is good. You spoke very well. Do you think a candidate running for mayor on a platform similar to the views that you've expressed would have a winning platform?
Yes.
Because that wasn't the case 3 years ago. And so this council generally has, as you know, this council has generally followed the wishes of the electorate from the last election.
I can accept that to a certain extent, but this council has also voted unanimously in some cases and in very large majorities towards programs that require money to be implemented.
That seems to be a frequent problem of this council, and presumably others as well. Anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John.
Okay, now I have Lynn Adamson.
Lynn Adamson.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'd just like to pass out my reputation, and I'd like to see about using this.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Production.
But they've made a mint. My parents have made a mint from rising prices. They have money.
So wait, there's three. That's for production. That's not to pass out. This is to pass out. Okay, I didn't have a stapler. Yes, we do want to pass that over to.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And this, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And for you, you've seen that before?
Thank you, former mayor and speaker Nunziata, for passing this along.
So there's just 3 pages on the deputation, and I was also hoping to just project the photos that I had.
Okay, so you've got 5 minutes, so just, we'll get the
Yeah,
thing
I
started
have-
right now. Okay.
Ask me about the money part after. I didn't put that in, but I'm happy to talk to you if you ask me a question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and a resident of Toronto since 1978. I live in Ward 15, where I enjoy a really diverse neighborhood near parks and ravines, and I bike downtown to shop and work every day. I love the city of Toronto and would love to see our city even more healthy and for more of our residents to be able to be happy and fulfilled in the city. That's a reference to people who are homeless or in need of housing. We need to be a more inclusive place, more affordable housing, access to restoration programs, nutrition programs, youth programs, and we will all benefit from these services being available to all with a safer and happier city. And I want to focus on one aspect of funding that is vital to the future of our city: climate action. I first became active with Climate Fast in 2012 when we worked to persuade members of Parliament to put carbon pricing, an end to fossil fuel subsidies, and renewable energy into action. In 2015, we turned our attention to the city we live in because we realized we can make major gains here by reducing CO2 drastically. Last year, we worked hard to see the Transform TO plan achieve its first year of funding, and now in year 2, we are working hard to see that all of the programs proposed by staff are fully funded. The reason is crystal clear. We are in a planetary crisis, and it is extremely urgent that the city do its part to achieve the carbon reduction targets agreed to internationally in the Paris Accord. Indeed, we need to do even better than that. The Paris Accord's voluntary agreement only gets us part of the way there. Without increased ambition, the planet's temperature will soar to over 3 degrees, and we will be in danger of destruction of our ability to live on the planet. We are part of what is being called the 6th Great Extinction, and we are the ones causing it. So let's do everything we can to prevent runaway climate change, while we also prepare the city to withstand the damage already being experienced. That's a photo of the island last summer of the flooding of the bridges over there. Flooding is a reality in our city, as are extremes of both cold, as we've just been experiencing, and heat in the summer. Daily temperature maximums are expected to increase from 33 degrees to as high as 44 degrees by 2040, according to the Senate's report that Jay referred to earlier. So, why is it important to reduce our emissions? Because the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere is way too high, more than 400 parts per million, and you will see on that chart that it's angling up to 450 parts per million by 2030 in the direction that we're going. This is higher than it's ever been while humans were on the Earth, and high enough to be raising the Earth's temperature, which is in turn melting the Arctic. We have to get that amount of CO2 in the atmosphere down, and to do so, it is essential we reduce our emissions as fast as possible. So how are we doing in that regard? So you can take a look at this chart. This is what we have to do. The business as usual is oil and gas soaring and the temperature soaring, and an estimated temperature of 2100 of greater than 4.5 degrees Celsius. We can't live on that kind of planet. That's not going to work. So Paris Accord, a big first step, very important. That only gets us to 3.5 degrees rise by 2100. If we want to stay under 2 degrees, we have to do what the green line or purple line there is indicating. We have to drastically reduce our carbon emissions. So how well are we doing? Sorry. So there's a report from the National Observer showed we're not doing very well at all, that our global energy use is still going way up. So this is a very recent report, and I have the reference at the bottom of the third page. Oil and gas use is still increasing despite increases in the use of renewable energy. So very major changes are needed, and the city has an abundance of concerned citizens ready and willing to work on the needed changes. Our group, Climate Fast, sponsored 12 film screenings in the fall of 2017. That's the Toronto Climate Film Festival. Many of our screenings have more than 100 people present. We offer these films in Scarborough, North York, and Etobicoke, as well as downtown Toronto. We know citizens are keen to be engaged and want us to succeed in our mission to reduce GHG emissions 80% by 2050, and we want to start right now by building net zero communities, such as is happening in Mount Dennis. Therefore, we want to make sure that the prioritization the staff were asked to do does not mean that any of the programs are lost. 2.2, community energy planning, which includes the Mount Dennis and the net zero, extending that to other communities, and 2.4, renewable energy strategy, are lowest on the prioritization list, and yet they are essential for us to move forward together as a city. In fact, the plan would be stronger with even more investment in community development. With the plan to retrofit all the buildings in the city, there comes an opportunity for an enormous boost to our economy, meaning jobs, as many as 330,000 person-years of employment over the next 30 years. If the city strategizes to make sure that vulnerable communities and young people have access to these jobs, receive training in energy-efficient construction and retrofitting, our communities will benefit enormously and our city's anti-poverty efforts will be enhanced. Buildings are 53% of emissions, transportation are 35%. That means we must continue our investment in transit infrastructure, safe walking routes and cycling paths to really encourage people to get out of their cars. This will make a safer and healthier city for all, and what we are asking here today is for you to commit to fully funding Transform TO.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions, councillors? No questions.
Well, sure.
Councillor Mahavik has a question.
Lynn, I know you've been at this for many, many years. Do you think Transform TO goes far enough?
No, it doesn't go far enough. But it's what you have right now. Like, we can't ask you to put more money into it because the staff hasn't got a plan or ability to spend more money right now, but to spend less than $1 per person for the entire year for everything we do about climate change when it is such a crisis and so urgent, well, I'd have to say it's a bargain. It's a real bargain for the Budget Committee. It should be a no-brainer to just approve that money, leverage money from other levels of government, and look to how we can expand that. For example, Transform TO got money, I think it's $250,000 to do community work in communities, but their budget is not enough to properly fund the community groups to work with them. That's an example of money they got, they want to spend, they want to do home retrofitting, which is something I'm already working with a group called Home Energy Savings Initiative. We got an environmental defense grant, and we're doing that in Ward 15. But we need more of that, and so it would be great to have more money. We just were told we can't ask for it because this is all the city is able to do right now, so let's do all of this and let's plan for how we can do more.
And if you were to plan, where would you put additional resources?
I would definitely put
Advise us to.
Pardon?
Or advise us to put.
Yeah, it would
resources.
advise the city to put it into linking effectively with communities, like give green neighborhood groups funding so that they can actually hire part-time people to work in the communities to outreach, to get people to sign up for things like the solar, putting solar on the rooftops, doing geothermal community energy planning, as you talked about, because to cut our buildings down, I've heard we can get 10 to 15% reduction in energy use through Home Energy Savings Initiative. We can get 30% through the HELP program. None of that's enough to get us to 80%. So we need far more ambitious community energy planning that will help people switch off of gas, which is mainly what people are using, into heat exchange technology and other ways of doing things, which is fantastic. We should be exploring those.
Thank you.
Francis, Councillor Nunziata?
I'm very pleased that you mentioned what we're doing in Mount Dennis.
Yes,
As you know, we've
it's
been the
very
lead
good.
on it. Yeah. So Do you not think, though, and I know that in Mount Dennis, we've been working, the community association has been working very hard and with Metrolinx and Toronto Hydro, as far as the gas plant that was originally supposed to be built at the Kodak land, and now it's a partnership with Toronto Hydro, that we need to lobby the federal and the provincial government to step up as well. Because you're right. I mean, even if we had all the money to put into it, we need the levels of government to implement the plan. Do you not agree?
And there is a lot of money there at the
Yeah.
provincial level and federal, but the city needs staff to leverage that money, to ask for it, to have the
Right.
program, to work with the communities to establish how it can be used.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I think the money is there, like the cap and trade program's bringing lots of money.
Yeah.
We just have to make an investment to get that money.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, to come back to Joe's point, we're doing $25 a year for arts funding per person. It's wonderful. I love our arts programs. But to say that we have to do, we can't afford less than $1 a year for Transform TO, that would be ridiculous, right? That's about our survival on the planet. And about the whole package, I did a quick estimate in my mind. I think it would be $20 per taxpayer per year. Maybe I have it wrong. Maybe it's closer to $50, but it wouldn't be a huge amount of money to fund all that $40 million that you don't have funded yet. And I would highly recommend you do it. I think those programs are needed. Nutrition, housing, shelter support, all those things, and the transit pass that you've already committed to, those things have to be funded, and it doesn't add up to much. Like, what's my math? It's probably off, but it's somewhere between $20 and $40 a year per household, I think.
Odds up.
And we could fund it. And I think people are willing to pay it. So I hope we can find the money for it.
I think people are willing to pay for it if they know it's dedicated tax that is going actually to those services. I think what
True.
frustrates taxpayers is that if you increase and it's not going to where they want the money to go to. Correct?
Yeah, they need to
Yeah.
see it, and more participatory budgeting processes and going out in communities and talking about it. Like, I was shocked last year when I went to the budget hearings, and there was a motion that all wards should have a participatory budgeting kind of meeting, and it was defeated by the city council. I couldn't believe it. I thought, that's ridiculous. We want to educate people more about where the money is going so they do understand and can give feedback to council members directly. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember that from last year?
Yes,
That was,
I do. Yes,
yeah,
I do.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's do more participatory budgeting.
Okay, thank you for your time today.
Okay, welcome. I just handed out the card, which has the Transform TO figures on impact. So also I have information on Transform TO if anyone
Okay.
here would like it. Thank you very much
Thanks
for your
for coming.
time. Thank you.
Okay, next I have Adriana Shuyin is here. Hello. Adriana, you'll have 5 minutes, and then you may be asked questions by councillors.
Okay,
Okay.
can I start? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana, and I'm from Ward 21, so I'd like to thank Joe Mahefik for being here today. I also like to thank the Budget Committee for giving me the opportunity to speak. So I wanted to address something that is very important to me, and that's reducing the impact of climate disruption on my city, my generation, and the children and families of the future. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I first learned about the environmental issues in high school, and I was very concerned, but I didn't know what I could do about it. And it was after volunteering for an environmental conference that I was so impacted and inspired by the enthusiasm and positivity of the people there towards solving our environmental issues that I decided to pursue my higher education in the environment and graduate at U of T with the knowledge and skills to help the environment. But I quickly learned that without the tools, resources, and financial investment needed to implement environmental policies and actions which could help improve the environment, human health, and well-being, that my vision of stopping climate change cannot be fully realized. That is why I'm asking for the mayors and the councillors to commit full funding for Transform TO, the city's climate action plan. This plan would not only respond to climate change, but also improve our ability to address other priorities such as poverty reduction, green job creation, and improving the state of housing. There are many other co-benefits, such as reducing energy bills and improving social housing conditions by retrofitting 100% of buildings by 2050, creating new green jobs, which is definitely what I'm looking for. Many of these jobs will come from the energy retrofits, as mentioned earlier. It will improve public health by aiming for 100% low-carbon transportation and active transportation. Lastly, it'll save on costs from cleanup and damage from extreme weather events. For example, in December 2013, with the ice storm alone cost the city $106 million. So if a $2.5 million investment for Transform TO could help mitigate even a small portion of that, that would help, that would reduce that would save a lot of taxpayers' money in the long run. The planning for Transform TO clearly took lots of time, resources, and input from residents, including funding. So it really doesn't make sense to put all of that to waste. We must put the resources into implementing the plan. In conclusion, I want to remind Toronto Council that Transform TO is an excellent opportunity to show leadership. I know that we're part of C40 cities, the Global Covenant of Mayors, as well as 100 Resilient Cities. So I ask that you take that responsibility to fund fully the Transform TO project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mihevik.
Is she the last speaker?
She's the last speaker, yeah.
Okay, so we have a little time. So what did you study in university, if I may ask?
I did environmental science and environment and health.
And are a lot of young people entering that area?
Yes, yes. Our program at U of T expanded, and we're having. So I'm in contact with the undergraduate coordinator, and he says that there's an increase in enrollment, mostly in the environmental studies side. I was in the environmental science side, but so more in the policies.
And can I ask you this? This will be the transformative not question, but depending on the answer, are your cohorts getting jobs in this area?
So I just graduated, but it was my friends, not really, a few of them. I honestly did get 2 part-time jobs in the field, so I'm very happy about that.
So would you say that one of the pieces of work that we need to, as a society, figure out is how to transform your expertise into employment?
Employment, yes.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your time today.
you.
Thank you for coming. Just want to acknowledge that Mayor John Tory has joined us this afternoon. Welcome to the York Civic Center. And so we just have a motion to conclude.
Well, let's ask if anybody else wants to speak.
Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak and come to the podium? No. Okay, thank you. So I'll read this. The motion is that the Budget Subcommittee for Etobicoke East York Civic Center consultation receive for information the public presentations and communications submitted by members of the public. All in favor? Thank you. And so we will reconvene at 6 p.m. tonight for evening deputations. Thank you all for coming.